live.
Oh, I can't believe the conversation before this show. I'm appalled.
I'm telling you.
This is the Lynn and
Not
Scott
appalled, you're
show.
excited.
And all our friends. Welcome,
Yes.
Scott.
Welcome to As We All See It, with, of course, all of our friends. And, you know, I wish we could deliver a great show tonight, but unfortunately, I think we used all of our best material before we came on the air. So we're going to do the best we can.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Make sure you share this with your friends. The show about absolutely nothing.
You know, it would be cool if you guys can compile a thing of bloopers that we have before the show. And just let the audience know that it's X-rated.
Wait, isn't every show a blooper though?
It is.
This is a group of professionals here. We don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Wait, that was last week's show.
Don't ask us why tonight you're having a special. This is Scott's a sandwich tonight, and I'm gonna leave it at that. And we're just gonna try to leave it like this.
Hold on.
And now I'd like to show you something I'm really proud of.
Oh, the inside jokes we have here. But before we get started, I want to take a minute out and we got a shout out. Our show got a shout out last week. Debbie Bettendorf was on Zena's podcast last week, and we got a shout out. Our show did. So thank you so much for Zena and for Debbie being over there and talking about our zany show. So thank you so much for that. And Debbie's been all over the place this week. She just yesterday she started her little line of she'll probably be here in the comments before too long. Oh yeah, Miss
I love the hat.
Traveler there. And so Debbie started a little clothesline thing, and when she gets on here, I'm gonna play a little podcast little thing of what she did yesterday. So anyway,
isn't that how you all dress over there? You all wear those hats?
No, that sounds tourist
salute or something.
Wait, what did you say, Barry?
What I'm saying is that's our tourist identification system. We have the Americans wear it so we can identify them.
Oh yeah, okay.
Didn't they just move those?
Every 6 months.
Oh, that was spring equinox. It's the spring and the fall they do it. Yeah, got it.
That's right.
Is it like cleaning? Spring
No,
cleaning?
It's a time change.
I got it.
Rotation.
Yeah. Got to get the shadow in the right place.
Oh boy. So what's our topic about today, Scott?
I forgot.
Well, I hadn't really had a topic, and I got all screwed up because of this stupid hurricane. Welcome to Florida. We got another hurricane. And I was supposed to be in Tampa training today, but the hurricane screwed that up. So, but I was watching a show last night. It was called The Worst Cooks in America. Anybody seen that?
Yes.
Yeah. I was just watching, and I'm watching a group, I think like maybe 16 people, all go on television and show how absolutely horrible they are at doing something. People in there trying to peel a potato with a spoon. I mean, I'm laughing my ass off. But at one point I stopped and thought, are you brave enough to let your ego go and be that bad at something that you can learn? And sometimes I think I forget to do that. I forget to be bad at things. I forget to let people know I don't know. And here we got a whole group of people with the whole nation watching them, or at least, whoever's watching that show, just putting their ego aside and saying, yeah, I suck at this. And I really want to learn. And it was just such a great moment for me to think about that and think, sometimes even today, even with all the things I know, I still got to watch my ego and make sure my ego doesn't block me from the lessons I could learn. And I think a lot of people do that. We all want to say, oh, I know what I'm doing. I got it. Instead of saying, I got no fucking clue. Somebody show me what to do, and I'd really like to learn. And it's just, it's something, it was kind of cool. And who knows, Worst Cooks in America would teach me a life lesson, but I did learn one last night. So that's what I want to talk about today, is not letting our ego get in the way of learning and exploring, I guess, So anybody can do anything they want with that. if you want to talk about,
I got
anything
a
else.
question for you. When you take your feet off the floor at nighttime to go to bed,
Yeah.
where does your ego go?
I don't know.
It
You're
crawls
right.
in next to me and I snuggle with it. I have no idea. I don't know.
Where is it?
It's with me. It's always with me.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because it's part of who I am.
How do you know?
How do I know? Because I have the ability to change it. And the only thing I can change are things that are part of me. And I have the ability to change and or stifle and or put it aside. I've got things in the only thing I can control in this world is my actions and me and who I am and my perception. So if ego is something I can control and can change,
Well, where
ergo,
is
it must be a part of me. And if it's a part of me, it's always with me. But how much it runs my life is really up to me. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's your answer, so I guess it answers the question.
It's not a bad thing to have an ego.
No, it's not bad. As
I
long
think
as
a
it
lot
doesn't
of people
block me
perceive it
from
like
learning.
you have an ego, like it's something.
Well, my point is where is your ego? How do you know you have an ego? This is a concept that we've been growing up with that says you have an ego, you have an id, you have a super, and I dispute that.
Let go my ego.
Well, what if we replace the word ego with pride?
Well,
Sure.
no, there's a difference there.
No.
Look, we're getting caught up in the semantics here, but
Right.
I call there is an entity in all of us that can destroy our lives if we listen to it on a consistent basis. And some people do call it the ego. Some people call it the troublemaker. Some people call it the devil, although that might be melodramatic. But if you listen to it on a consistent basis, there will be hell to pay. I call it the big mouth inside your head. And I call it the big mouth because it never shuts up. And it's that voice that keeps telling you to play it safe. Don't go out of the line. Don't be risky. That's the part of you that always keeps you back from succeeding. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not worthy enough. The big mouth inside your head is the part of you that brings up past experiences, toxic labels from your past that control you and make challenging situations in the moment worse than what it has to be. The big mouth can destroy your life unless you become aware of what it's doing to you. And that is one of the main criteria that can stifle a person's life. If you really want to know what separates people who succeed and people who consistently fail from those who are generally happy most of the time to those who are miserable, it's because of the big mouth inside your head, because the big mouth will allow you to spur out what some people call negative self-talk. I call self-curse talk. You're setting out to achieve a goal.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you hit a wall. And all of a sudden you just go into this tantrum. I can't believe this. Every time I try to do something, it never happens. Every time I try to do something, I go 2 steps up, 3 steps back. Everybody else has what I want. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy enough. And they can't understand why their lives aren't working. That's because they have fallen prey to the big mouth inside their head that is spewing up all the shit that happened to them in the past into the present moment. And that challenge doesn't even have to be big. It could just be one little thing that everyone goes through when you're setting out to achieve a goal. But to these people, when the big mouth is ruling their lives, it continues to rule it, and you listen to it. And the more you listen to it, the more you feed it.
You know what? And real quick to go back on that, Steve, what I always said, if you're confident with yourself, you'll announce your weaknesses. So you're confident with yourself. Someone asked me if I can fix a car. Absolutely not. I am the most handyman ever. If I fix something in the house, my wife will have a handyman to come fix it later. Am I embarrassed? No. It's something I can't do. But once you can admit your weaknesses, it leaves you open. It leaves you vulnerable. People can approach you. They can, it's not that guy that can do everything. So I think confidence is great. You got to be confident, man. I'm the most confident person I ever met, but I will tell you in a heartbeat what I cannot do, and I'll admit to it. And I think that just opens it up to a lot of other opportunities for people.
Yeah.
So what I would like to add, if you don't mind, Because I see Barry's jumping into the center there all the time.
I'm being pushed around. I don't care where I am.
Yeah, that's fine. I would add that everything you said, Steve, is accurate, but I would take exception to it. I would point out that John just gave us the big mouth in his head when he said we can't do this. Whether it's true or not, that's what John said. That's what he lives by, and it's great to admit things like that. There's things I can't do, so it's not a negative thing. But what I would argue is that a lot of people, when you say they think it's the devil, they think it's this, they think it's that people personify this thing as if that voice or that ego is somehow judging you or making, trying to get you and attack you and defeat you because. And I would argue that they're just processes. It's like we've got these recordings of voices we've heard all our life. We have personalized them. We play them over and over and over again, depending on the circumstances. And we somehow think they're either separate from us or they're a part of us or they're this from us. But all they are is a collection of audio tapes, in theory, that keep playing, that are triggered by associations and memories and experiences that come up in life. And we react as if they are accurate when they're not, and then we personify it and say, well, it's my ego or it's my demon or it's my this or it's myself or I'm doing this or I'm sabotaging it, when it's just processes of the brain. And if you understand it's just processes and we devoid ourselves from personifying it and owning it and accepting it, we have a better chance of turning the voice down or playing it at a different rate or getting free from it, because it's not something that is part of us. It's something that is a process that plays, but it's not us.
Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, un momento. I gotta hear Barry for a second. Un momento. Hold that thought.
He wants to go back to the pre-show talk.
I'm not attached to this because my ego doesn't play that way. The thing about the ego, which I want to break down this way, is the ego is not the big bad voice in your head. It's just a part of what we think we are. It's our personality descriptor. It's how we think of ourselves in the world. The ego is not good or bad. It's how we use it. And the thing about the ego, one of my favorite definitions is the ego stands for edging God out. The ego is basically where we think we're separate from, better than, or otherwise in charge. And the reality is we're part of something bigger than that. And so the thing about the ego is it's good to have one, because otherwise we would not get out of bed in the morning. Speaking about getting out of bed, it's what drives us, what moves us. But the thing is, if we then let it run the show, it's like having a 5-year-old driving a car. Not a good idea. Because the other thing is, Scott, about the ego, the fact you're talking about the ego means you're not the ego. That's the key.
Right.
Ego's part of us. If you don't know you have an ego, you think you are it, and that's the confusion. So the thing about
I argue that you don't have an ego, that it's just a concept that we have bought into that doesn't exist.
Yeah. The ego
but you have to admit, you have to admit there's something within us that keeps us from
but that's not the ego.
failing. There is something, and
it
doesn't matter what, you don't even have to call it anything, but there is something in us that keeps people from going on with their lives. And I guess, this is good conversation because it's tough as to how you want to label it. But I think the key is, whatever you want to call it, the key is awareness. Because as soon as you become aware of what you're doing to yourself and what you're saying to yourself, then you have an opportunity to steer your thought process in another direction.
And then we got books like this, Conversation with Bob.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Maybe I'll write
it. I think you're closer to it with the awareness piece. I was talking to my daughter today, and I was sharing that over the weekend I had a situation where I walk into the situation knowing my role and very comfortable with my role and very accepting of my role. And as the day goes on and the opportunities present themselves, I get to put me in the game, coach. I'm ready to go. And so we were talking, and her being a former college athlete and now a CrossFit competitor, I said, George, I guess the best way to say this, have you ever had a time where you felt like you could help the team and you were sitting there, and although you were being a great team player, you just wanted to get in there and contribute? She goes, oh, I get exactly what you're talking about. And I think that's actually this topic of letting your ego rob you from the lesson, because I actually went, oh, I can actually learn a lot from this. Number one, do I have the desire to be in there? Do I want to contribute? Do I want to utilize the talents and capabilities God's granted me to put my fingerprint on it, not for me necessarily, but do I think that I can, provide added value? Yes. But it's also not what I was asked to do at that time. And so there's this combination. The lesson was always be prepared, always be ready if in fact that situation comes up that you can add value, but you add value in certain situations when you're asked to, not because you want to, so it's that kind of thing. So it was actually a great lesson for me. And then I thought it was interesting that all of a sudden my daughter and I had this conversation today, and I was able to say, remember when you wanted to come off the bench so bad and you wanted to contribute and help so much? It wasn't for bad reasons. It wasn't that you thought anybody else was doing a poor job. You just wanted to add value. She goes, yeah, absolutely. She goes, when I was watching this CrossFit competition this weekend, I wanted to help one of our competitors lift at that point, which you can't do. But it was the mental desire to throw the mojo to her, to make it happen. So anyway, I think it's an interesting topic because I just literally lived this.
Yeah,
Excellent.
It's just like when we know the answer and we've been through an experience, and then we want to give everybody the answer to save them from going through an experience. But that's not how that goes sometimes, because sometimes people have to know that the stove does burn. And because if they don't know that the stove can burn them, then they don't have compassion for a burn victim to even know what they're going through or things like that.
I learned a great lesson along that way with Zig Ziglar one time. We were out at lunch and somebody offered to buy Zig's lunch. And Zig said, yeah, that'd be great. And then when the person got up to go pay the bill, somebody else said, but Zig, you got plenty of money to do, to pay for everybody's lunch. And he said, that's not the point. Why would I deny him the pleasure of doing what he wanted to do?
Right.
Somebody
Why
actually said
would I
that?
not be graceful in accepting that gift from him?
Right.
I mean, a huge lesson, great lesson.
Right. So because that's one thing I did learn is like I wanted to help everybody, and then you realize sometimes helping people they don't see it when they need it, and vice versa. So you have to know when to give and when to take, because what you give out always comes back one way or another. So, paying somebody's meal doesn't mean that you expect that person to pay your meal. It'll come somewhere else. So things come full circle, but we have to realize we don't have to be thanked by that person. You'll be thanked from somewhere else so that it does go around. And I think same thing with our ego, and sometimes I think
I go back to saying there's no such thing as an ego.
Okay. So let's
if
have you noticed Rex is a contrarian?
If Freud had said you're a squirrel, we'd all be calling it a squirrel. If
well, right, and that's
we're a society that has labels. What would you call it, Rex?
I wouldn't call it anything. Here's
but
what
there is something. No. This
is what I'm trying to say. Is there is not something.
Yes,
it's not an it. I'm saying it's not an it. There are processes, but if we would listen to the rules that we speak when we talk about this thing, that there must be this thing, or there is this thing, or if we do this, this happens, or we do that. These are rules. They're not necessarily governed by a rule center in our brain or our ego. I'm just saying the point is to listen to the rules, because these are the things that we live from. And we try to fulfill is the rules, the values, the beliefs, the limitations that we have. But that doesn't dictate that it has to be some part of us. One of the beneficial things of therapy is that there's parts therapy. And one of the worst things about therapy is that there's parts therapy. Mm-hmm. Because then people say, well, a part of me wants this and another part of me wants that. And so this, that, and the other thing, and all my parts are messed up. And so you have a parts party and you do this and you unite it's all metaphor. It's all analogy for some processes that we don't understand. I'm not trying to say that it's wrong to talk about an ego. What I'm trying to say is when we put it on an ego, we're missing so much of what we're saying because we're accusing some aspect or something that we think resides inside us of doing things when we're doing them.
So how do you identify it if you can't label it?
So
Let me agree with Rex on that point. That yeah, I understand. Ego is just a term. I mean, I'm not thinking of it. Ego is not something I caught from a toilet seat in Central Park in New York.
Yes,
It's
it
not.
is.
It's
It
not.
could be.
it could be. That's right.
And I'll tell you this: I look at alcoholism and drug addiction the same way. It's not something that's separate from me. It's not something that is another part that comes in. It's who I am. It's how I think. It's my mechanisms and all those things. And when I think about my ego, I think of the same way. And when I say ego, I'm talking about my pride, where I don't want to look foolish, or I don't want to be judged. So I create a scenario where I know everything, or I don't need. And all I'm saying is it's really nice to put that aside, whether you call it ego, pride, or just that, whatever it might be, the bravado or overconfidence, where I can put those things aside every once in a while and just say, you know what? I don't freaking know. And allow myself to be open for things. That's what I'm talking about. I agree with you 1,000%, Rex. I don't like anybody. People tell me all the time, it's like, oh, my addiction made me do that. I'm like, well, what the frick are you talking about? You are your addiction. You made yourself do that. So, yes.
And what my point in this is when you use it as something to blame, it's my ego, or something to promote, you're missing
I agree.
People, we're missing the very things we say that are keeping the process of being stuck.
Right.
You know, we're missing the rules. This is the point. It is if you say it's my ego that does it, you're putting everything under an umbrella, as opposed to being able to tease out the things that you would like to be able to change. You just, well, my ego made me do it, or the devil made me do it, or my mom made me do it. It's the same kind of, it makes it an other person inside of us that's doing something, instead of, hey, we do these things that we can transform.
Well,
Yes.
we should detach from labels.
That's
like
fair.
Wayne Dyer would preach that all the time, you know, detaching from labels and having labels be, or have words.
Yeah,
or
but
things.
Wayne Dyer also talked about ego a lot too.
Well,
So he could be wrong. Who cares?
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think you're right there. Right? You don't have. It's not labeling it. I think the key is becoming aware that something's not right within you,
Right.
and you need to fix. But I don't think there's anything wrong with putting a label on it. Not a label like you're disregarding that you're doing it to yourself, but it's labeled so you could say, okay, there's a part of me that's fucking my life up. There's a part of me that's really screwing me. I've got to figure out where this is coming from, and why it's doing it. Because you can't fix something unless you know it's broken.
Go ahead, Rex.
Well, if you hear what you just said in your discussion,
I don't even know what I just said.
Well, you just said
It's doing it.
That's the first problem.
It's not about the label. It's not about this is just a fine nuance, and that is, and this isn't what you're saying, but I'm using what you just said. If someone says there's a part of me that's screwing me up, there's a part of me that's screwing up, doing all these things, instead of listening to what was just said, which is there's a part of me that is screwing me over, and transforming that phrase, instead of accepting that as a reality of saying, you know what, I would have said that there's a part of me who screws me up, but you know what, I'm a resourceful and a brilliant person.
Yes.
I'm resilient, and I can find many different ways to think about this and behave differently, more along the lines of what I'd really like to do, and then put your attention into what you want to do instead of blaming some.
It's not blaming. I think for a lot of people, though, it's not blaming. It's just acknowledging that there's a part of you that doesn't make your life work, and there's a part of you that makes your life work. And it's easy for some people to say the one part that's not working is your ego, and the other part is your authentic self or your true self.
So we can go back and forth. I want to make sure we get Kel and Ann in here for a minute. And then Rex, I got a question for you. But I also want to tell you, Wayne Dyer didn't hate all labels, because I did see him in a Brooks Brothers suit. So he didn't hate all labels, all right?
But
Go ahead, Callahan.
Okay. You know how I
That
talk
was a long way to go for that, Scott.
I talk in obtuse circles, but eventually I get to the point. This is going to be one of those instances. I always go back to definitions, your basic definitions. We've got ego being self-esteem and self-importance. With that, I believe awareness is a component that is important so that it doesn't turn into arrogance. Okay? That's my first point. The second point is when we're talking about we talked about pride and bringing that into the ego, which to me are two completely different sectors. Pride is a sense of satisfaction, which is a feeling that you get when you feel you've done something to the best of your ability, correct? So when we're putting the label ego onto something as a negative or a positive, isn't that really superego? Because
we're adding another label here, but okay.
No, I'm just saying, because superego is where we put society's definitions and constraints into our in defining things. So technically, I think we're talking about superego when we're saying that we have, when ego is, defining your life or defining your feelings or things like that. So
superego has a cape.
Is it Marvel or DC?
Yes. So I know I kind of went off in a circle there, I was very, definition-esque, but that's how my mind works.
So I'd like to add a bit of a piece in especially about the lesson piece, because that's the thing we've been talking about the ego a lot. We haven't talked about the lesson piece.
Yeah.
The thing is that, well, firstly, a little story, because most people know this one. But the thing with the butterfly is when a caterpillar goes into the cocoon and becomes a butterfly through that strange transmogrification thing that goes through, which nobody understands how that works, I think. The thing is that there's a story about when a young kid with his dad was walking in the yard and found this cocoon cracked open and the butterfly was trying to get out and was struggling. And so the dad took the cocoon off of the bush it was on, and the kid took it inside and very carefully with a knife they cut open the cocoon and got the butterfly out. The problem is the butterfly never flew, because part of what happens when the butterfly is struggling to get out of the cocoon is the pumping action of pushing to get out of the cocoon puts blood into the wings so it can fly. It's actually physically it's not possible for a butterfly to fly if it's taken out of the cocoon prematurely. So that's one thing I want to say, because a lot of times our lessons, if they are, like Scott was saying earlier, if they're shortchanged in a way, like if they're taken away from us because we don't get the full blessing, we have to do it again, frankly, because lessons are given. So when you learn the lesson, it's like, I remember when in a master program, we talked about these things called stackers, where the idea being is when you learn a lesson, it's like, imagine those sort of these angels up on clouds with these lightning bolts that throw them down at you. Basically, it's like, didn't learn the lesson, here, try it again. Here, try it again. What happens when you learn the lesson, they don't throw them down anymore, except once in a while they will, to make sure you learn the lesson. So lessons are gifts we get to grow through life with. And I said, grow through life with as part of the journey. The thing about the ego piece is, and I think in the context of the statement is, for me, it's about the idea is that when we turn a blind eye or we think we're better than, that's the dangerous one, then the lesson that's coming is when we miss out on the lesson. And that's for me what this real lesson, the journey is sometimes we think we're too good for the low-level lesson we're getting. That's when we get, quote, attached to our ego sort of thing, when we think we don't deserve it or we're better than that, whatever that thing is, that comparative thing, that's where we get out of touch with reality. So I personally believe that the lessons we get most of the time are gifts. But I've also learned when we ignore lessons, they sometimes get a little bit louder, a little bit louder, a little bit louder. So instead of being a tap on the shoulder, it's a hammer upside the head. So when you get the lessons, I suggest you try to get them as soon as you can, so you don't pay the price later on for a much harder lesson. Exactly. So just throw that on the table.
I like that. Let's continue into the second half of the show and talk about the lessons. And we'll all agree, just like Rex said, that the ego is something you catch from a virus like from Wuhan or something, and it's just a virus we all caught.
Well, it's in New York.
Whatever reasons we stop ourselves, we rob ourselves of lessons sometimes. Call it ego, call it arrogance, call it just not being open. And maybe we'll continue on and follow up on that second half. And thanks for setting that up, Barry. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was going to say, I think a big part of it is the awareness, but it's really being observant of the fact that there's a lesson in, an equal and opposite reaction in everything that happens, which means that there's typically a lesson in everything that happens. The only question is, are you observant enough to recognize it as a lesson? And are you willing to subordinate, and you may call it ego, but are you willing to subordinate what you already know to go, oh, I could learn something else on top of what I already know? And I agree with you, Barry. I think, you get that tap on the shoulder, and then the 2x4 across the face. I mean, it's
I've been there, I know.
Well, me too.
I think we all
And it's one of those that I think that the more observant you get, one of the things about growing or being in this space and being around very knowledgeable people is being able to accept different hypotheses and different potentialities, right? You're living the situation, but I've described it to people before. There are times where I'm in the middle of a conversation, but I'm standing over here too, observing it. I've been able to somehow develop an observer role at the same time I'm in the midst of it. And the observer is a whole lot smarter than the guy in the middle of the fray. The guy in the middle of the fray is throwing out all the stuff, and the observer goes, boy, that was really a dumbass thing to say. What the hell was that? Where do you think that was going to go for you? But the good news is the observer's got a pretty good memory and can come back and replay that situation and go, wow, I could really learn from that. And so I think the one thing that, and it's interesting because I reflected on, last week's show where somebody said, I think Debbie said, I'm just cool as a cucumber in my response. I don't get shook on anything anymore. Good, bad, indifferent. It just doesn't, because I guess so much shit has happened across the years that you finally get to the point of going, why not look for the opportunity to learn something or the opportunity to add something or the opportunity to do whatever, as opposed to having to be right. You want to be right or you want to be happy. You want to, it's one of those kind of situations. Do you want to, does it always have to be your situation? I developed a presentation 10 days ago that I thought was probably part of the best 12 and a half minutes of presentation I had ever put together in my career. And then I went to an event and I went, well, I think that's great. I'm not sure anybody else would. And I totally deconstructed and rebuilt something that I think now is even better. But I don't know that I would have necessarily done that in the past. I would have gone, oh, look at what this is like. Oh, this is the best. I'm never going to do, right? And you start to, and it's funny. I was in a meeting with a guy today, and I referred to something that I learned. I said, I got trained by an insurance company. And to this day, I use what I learned when I was trained at 18 years of age. And I said something to him, and he goes, God, I used to use that. Why don't I use that anymore? That is so good. And I said, well, let me be honest with you. I don't think I've said it in 20 years myself until just now. And I had learned it 20 years before that. So how many things do we learn that work, that all of a sudden it's like we feel we have to learn something else? And yet what we already knew is pretty dang good. So again, I think part of it is being able to critically say, hey, I could dust that off and bring that in. That was a real good way to handle that situation. Things like that. I think if you're open and honest with everything you've observed in your life and all the different things, I think you'll go back and figure out a lot of the shit that you thought was really bad isn't all that bad. And a lot of the stuff that you thought was all that bad is actually pretty good. I mean, I'm pretty sure leisure suits are coming back. I'm just saying. I don't know.
It is cyclic, yeah.
And you're welcome to wear them.
No, you're the guy in Wisconsin.
That's true. So I want the double pockets on one side, both breasts. You know, I want the.
Corduroy.
So first, let me say, when I say the thing about ego, you're not wrong if you believe that there's an ego. I mean, I'm not saying that to make yourself wrong, or that I'm trying to make you wrong if you believe it. What I'm getting at is, if I say bell pepper, who here can imagine a bell pepper? Everybody? Okay. What color bell pepper did you imagine? Red?
Red.
Yellow?
Red, yellow, orange, green.
No, yeah, no. And there's purple. But which one did you actually imagine? Oh, you
I like red.
Scott went. I'm going all out. I'm having a short
spectrum.
Green.
So somebody green, red. Okay, but here's the thing. If I say pepper, it's a thing. It's an item. You can imagine it. It's concrete. If I say ego, what is it?
Yeah, right. You can't grab it.
It's a concept, is what I'm trying to get at. It's a concept. And there's nothing bad about having the concept. But I tell this story a lot about Muhammad Ali saying, I don't like to train. You know, there's days I don't want to go out and I don't want to train. But if I want to be a champion, I need to go and do that. He doesn't say, my ego makes me want to sit on the couch and not train, and then blame some aspect of himself. He says, there's just times I don't want to do that, but I know if I want to do something and be bigger, I have to go do it. And what happens for people is we treat these concepts as if they're things, as if they're a physical reality that somehow prevent us from being all that we could be, instead of developing the awareness and the recognition that if we want it to be different, we can make it different. It's not that there's an ego that stops us from being it any more than there's a Dr. Jekyll inside of us who's preventing us, or Mr. Hyde inside of us who's preventing us. These are concepts that we've grown up with, we've been introduced to, with whether, you know, whoever promotes them. They're just descriptions of processes that have become almost as if they're a thing. And they're not things. They're just descriptions. And we buy the description as if it's a reality. There's nothing wrong with that. But the key to changing is to understand that you have the power to change yourself and to adopt any point of view that you wish to. If you can believe that there's an ego, you can believe there's not an ego. You can believe that there's, you know, whatever. You know, so the point is, why not believe the best in yourself? And all the stuff that we talk about hardship in the world and struggle, and that they're lessons and gifts, then you go, bring it on, for crying out loud. Get me out of my comfort zone. Why not? Let's just accelerate it. Give me a huge bunch of shit for the next couple of days so I can get this over with already. I mean, yet still most people say, you know, all this hardship is a lesson, but we still don't want the lessons. You know, let me avoid it. I don't want to get uncomfortable here. But that discomfort is what moves us forward. Desire is what moves us forward. You know, being dissatisfied moves us forward. So when we encounter things that run counter to what we want to do, instead of blaming ourselves for it, or blaming an aspect of ourselves for it, or labeling it somehow, let's just start doing what we'd like to be doing. And just, well, I can't, because then you have to hear what you're saying. You have to say, I can't because. You know, that's why Henry Ford said, I never let what I cannot do prevent me from doing what I can do. And yet people stop themselves all the time and prevent themselves all the time because of this reason or that reason. It's either inside themselves, some aspect or part or thing that they label as, or outside themselves. It's God or the government or some person or some event or some circumstances that prevents them. I'm saying, you're above all these concepts. You are infinite possibilities and infinite opportunities and infinite resources. So don't be held captive to a concept or a description. Why not be held captive to a bell pepper?
Red or green?
Well, I mean, if I said
purple.
But if I said I can't do it because the bell pepper inside of me won't let me, that's as real as I can't do it for whatever other reason is.
That was well said. That was
so. That's the thing.
Well,
say the thing is, what you're saying, Roxy, is so true, because the thing is, we oftentimes say can't because we think we can't do something. The truth is, it's not we can't, we won't. There's a big difference because physically it's possible. There's actually a joke, not a joke, conversation I had recently. I'll say it that way.
A maneuver.
A friend of mine was talking about the fact is in some ways, when a woman asks a man to do something, if he says, "Honey, can you take out the trash?" His answer in head is, "Yes, I can." Doesn't do anything about it because he's been asked to do it. He's been told, "Is it physically possible?" "Yes, I can do that." So, ladies, when you want your man to take out the trash, say, "Honey, will you take out the trash?" Then it's a volitional thing, and you can make a difference. Because again, back to what Rex was saying, it is about you can't do it. Its reality is you simply won't because of whatever reasons you justify it. So decide, because the big thing is when you realize that it's like, oh, hang on a second, I do have a choice.
That goes both ways, though, too.
Oh yeah, no argument.
Just thought I'd say that. That's all.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
But what you just said about it's the justification is the thing that stops people. If they can justify it by whatever, then they can use that as their something. That's why Muhammad Ali didn't say this. He said, "I don't feel like it, but I go do it anyway."
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can do something, it doesn't mean you will do something. It can be possible, and you still won't do it.
Right.
So you have to get to the point of I can do it. It is possible for me to do it. Now, will I do it? And if I will do it, now I have then I could fall on my ass, or I could have great success, or I get the results I hope for, or I don't. But at least I've done something.
Yeah, choice.
Right.
Absolutely.
Whoa, moment of silence.
Wait, he's having a conversation right now.
No, I'm fine.
He's back with the pre-show.
You keep telling yourself that, Steve.
I always do.
Okay.
I put my ego aside.
Let's go with Miss Wagmore. Life's lessons learned.
What are we talking about?
Dealer's choice.
Yeah, thought we were talking about Steve.
There's one more thing I was going to talk about, and it's our id, because we were just talking about our id before we went live. And
we were talking about a lot of things before we went live.
I know, but I'm going to tie this back into the real life topic.
Yes, you have all three bases.
Letting your ego rob you from lessons, because to me, my ego is my instinct, right? We all know that. And what that allows me to do is to maybe do something I'm not used to that I think I might fail at. It'll allow me to make my mistakes, and it will make me more accepting of the lessons that I would learn by allowing myself to have those lessons. You know me, short and sweet.
I love it.
Well, it could also set you up for success as well, though.
Oh, obviously. Yeah, totally.
Well, but I find it interesting that you looked at it as I can make this attempt and I can fail and I can learn.
Right.
You can also have success in that and you can learn.
Yeah, but the topic was rob you of your lessons. So I went with that.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm
very literal. I don't know if you figured that out.
I'm extending a little bit.
No, I totally agree with you too.
But I mean, I think that, there's so many, I don't think you have to have a bucket of crap in order to learn.
Right.
It doesn't.
No.
The fact is, every situation is a learning opportunity. Every time we do this show, you damn well better learn because the next week there's another one coming, right? And so the fact is, no, but I mean, it's even how we all banter about and how we, sequentially work off of each other and different things, and you learn. Where you can come in and where you can't, and what's a good thing to add and maybe not as much, or where you can confront the concept, not the person, except with Barry and the manure joke. But the there's always got to be a place to slip that in there. Just has to be.
My ego's not attached to that.
No,
because it goes over his head all the time.
No, but I think that I think the reality is things don't always have to be negative to learn.
No,
right.
It doesn't have to be in the crapper to try to pull it out and do it. It's not necessarily about perfection either. It's about better than the last time.
Mm-hmm.
It's because there is no true perfection. But Wow, that worked pretty well. I would think, Steve, when you were telling jokes, when you were on stage, you'd throw something out there and go, "This is going to be a good one," and it either went well or it didn't. And if it went well, you kept it in the act, and if it didn't, you might have modified it a little bit or chucked it.
Well, if it didn't go well, I told the audience they sucked.
Well, that's a definite interesting technique.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Yes,
So
because
Scott, you're talking about the evolution.
Evolution,
Scott.
Steve.
Scott, I like what you're saying, because if you think about it, every day you go in and if you got a business or whatever, you go in and, hey, listen, I had a great day. I made a couple of grand and I made a good deal here. But then you take a look at it and say, all right, that's great. Now I could just do this every day, or I could take a look and say, what worked? Now, how far can I take it next time? Because if I made a grand today, I want to make 1,100 tomorrow. I want to make 1,200 the next day. You always want to improve. So you're right. It doesn't have to be a bad situation to learn from a situation. Learning is growing. It's just growing.
no,
It's when we think we're right about everything all the time, and we think we know all the answers.
No,
That's
Scott,
when
that's a great point. It's a great point, both of you, because it's just as important to learn from your successes in life as it is from your mistakes and failures. It all equals out. What you learn from both determines who you become as a person. That's how you grow. You grow from your successes. You grow from the times you screwed up. How did you learn from it? Did you move forward as a result? Did it keep you back from doing other things? And then when you succeed, there's a ton of things to learn from that. That's empowerment. That's what it's all about. And balancing both of those out determines who and what you become as a person as you go on. And then you get to a point where you can actually look back and enjoy both. If you learned something from every aspect of your life and you get to a certain point, which is what I've been doing lately, I don't even say that one's better than the other. The things that I failed at, the things that I screwed up, and the things that they're equal, because I learned from both. And as a result, that's what led me to grow, and that continued growth paved the way to who and what I am right now. And we all have the opportunity to do that. All of us.
I mean, I'm living from a place of all things work together for my good. I mean, I'm living in that so deeply these days, but the whole point is it doesn't say all things are good, but all things work together for your good. And so what if you really buy into that, what you'll find is using everything to find the good. You'll find what good can you find from it, no matter whether it was good or less than good.
But you know the story of the guy whose son fell off the horse and broke his leg. And the neighbors came and said, "Oh, wow, that's terrible." And he said, "Well, maybe not." And the Army came in and said, "Oh, we're going to conscript all the people who are healthy, young, able bodies." And he wasn't conscripted. And they went, "Oh, wow, that's fortuitous." And the father said, "Well, maybe yes, maybe no." I mean, and it goes on. I mean, again, we have to understand that we judge things good or bad. Maybe they all do work together for good. Maybe it's all good, but our egos, I say that tongue in cheek, just don't like some of the things that happen.
The ego that you don't believe in?
Yeah, the ego I don't believe in.
I think he was directing it at the middle box, but I'm just.
I pointed this way, but the point I'm making is we are people who make judgments.
Right.
Now, my business, I'm a modeler. I take examples of talent, genius, whether it's in science, art, music, you name it, whatever it is. And I build models based on that. Now, some of those models I teach, as an explicit model, or some of them I just incorporate into trainings. But the point is, in order to do that, you have to look at each exemplar, all the good examples, and you have to compare them and go, what do they have in common that helps them to work? What are the good things that they're doing, the talents, the ability? Then you have to contrast what is each one doing that's different from the others that allows them to succeed. And are these elements all necessary in order to have the model, or can some of these be stripped out, both in the good stuff and the bad stuff? The same thing happens in life. We compare and contrast. We go, well, this is a good thing because, again, it goes back to rules. Because this happened this way, it's good, or because it happened that way, it's bad. What if it's just what it is, and then we add the judgment to it, which is the part where we either suffer or celebrate. Because if we're judging it as, I don't like this, this hurts, this is terrible, this shouldn't have happened, blah, 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 we probably don't feel that good. And if we go, wow, you know what? This was wonderful. I mean, it wasn't what I'd asked for. You know, I'm exploring some options that I would never had to explore before. I'm learning some things that I would, but it's all for my good. Then maybe we go through it differently.
I think that's what all things work together for your good. Yeah. That's what it really ends up doing. It's neither good. You get far less judgmental, quite frankly, because it's neither good nor less than good. It just is.
And, let me share. Yeah, let me share with you guys a quick little thing that this is something that happened. I was working with with a client, and this client came out of New York. He was a Latin king, and if you're familiar, that's not a good place to be. Is in the Latin kings. He was conscripted there by his father. His father was a Latin king, and when he was a child, they made him a Latin king. He didn't want to be a Latin king. They made him one, and every time he disagreed with his father would hit him in the head with a ball-peen hammer, and he had skull fractures and brain damage. And he ended up spending most of his life in prison, most of the time in solitary, because every time he was in the yard, somebody would get hurt or would die. And he came to me, drug addicted and hurting. And me and a group of people, we all worked with this guy. And every time something came up, he would say, I can't change. My life won't let me change. My father won't let me change. The Latin kings, everything his whole life he believes was controlled by something outside of himself. And we got a little crack in the concrete. He got better for a little while. And then every time things would start to get a little bit better and he would start to get happy, all those demons, which were all of his constructs, would come back on him and shut him down, and he would go backwards. And about 6 months ago, they found him dead in a car, fentanyl overdose. Never, ever reaching that point in his life where he said, I get to choose to be happy. I get to choose to learn. I get to choose to change. I get to do all of that because of all these things that life put upon him. These are the lessons. Now, that's an extreme case. But how many times do we put these constructs on top of ourselves and call it ego, call it pride, call it id, call it a horse that Barry can't find, whatever you want to call it. It's just, it's all stuff that we just create to put in a way of us just letting go and seeing what's around us and taking advantage of what's around us.
Yeah.
But as always, you guys, I love all of your comments. I love everything you share. I love the fact that we could all go in 1,000 different directions and somehow still end up at the same place, which is at the end of the show for final thoughts. So let's go around.
Nicely done.
Not a final.
We did that already.
Well, I want to say a couple things real quick. And it really is sad that at first we started school, preschool and kindergarten, and you are allowed to go there and be creative and be who you are. And, then life comes and things change, and we should, and then we get older and we get to a point where we don't give a shit and we start being ourselves again, because we survived a lot of crap. And then we realize, and then you kind of get to a point where we wish we knew things, hindsight is everything, like they say, and then I think that's why, like they say, it's great to be with the older generation, because you bring down the wisdom to the younger kids, and they don't realize they're being fed all this wisdom that can change their life, and but we're still here, and that's what I love about all the shows and all the programming and producing and all the things I'm doing. Is I really hope that people out there realize that and resonate that we are trying to make a difference with the world, that you have the opportunity to change and realize that you're not stuck with the programming you got and the programming system that we were programmed in school, that you have freedoms. You have freedoms to change everything, your relationships, the people you're around with, and the people that are, that made it to the top are not all the people that you should be following as influences. There's a lot of people that are there that are bad influences and that have ruined it for other people. But be mindful if that's not working for you either, that, and I'm just wanting to give clues that, I do have, and I'm not honored or happy to say this, but I do have a lot of influential people coming to me now that want to be in my shows and want to follow what I'm doing. And I'm not that doesn't impress me by no means, but I take to heart to know that I'm surrounding myself by people I endorse, believe in, and I'm wanting to be around people that impact other people for the greater good, because I see all the bullshit that's out there and it really stinks really bad, and I'm allergic to it, and I hope a lot of people are seeing other ways to get out of their stuff, because as I've been getting more educated on life insurance and all this other stuff of the great people I'm around, I keep seeing the sadness of, I wish I would have known things then. I wish other people would have taught me. My life would have been better, but I can't look at it that way. I got to look at it. I was deprived that stuff so that I know that I'm more enriched now, and make sure that I can help other people not be where I was. And so all I'm saying is this thing about thinking I had an ego or this or that, and being more vulnerable about the shame that I've carried and all these great people I surround myself. I'm very, very blessed to be around every one of you guys. The fact that you show up, the fact that you share your lives and you make an impact. I'm just blessed by all this. And I'm just, you leave me speechless, and I just can't say that enough. I love every one of you guys, and I'm looking forward to the last 4 minutes for everybody to have their 30 seconds on this topic. So thanks for letting me vent and rant.
Thanks, Lynn. We all love you.
Thank you.
We all love you.
So go ahead, Mr. Hipster.
30 seconds around the room.
I just think that we have a great opportunity to learn with everything that's going on, period. And it just makes a whole ton of sense to get in that observer role and see what's available to you. If you don't like it, you can critically deny it. But the fact is, there's all sorts of different information flowing at you each day. Why not use it to your good?
Excellent.
Thank you, Hipster.
Excellent. Barry.
Something that came to mind was I've noticed a lot more marketing and advertising and commercials for mental health support. And speaking of your story you said earlier, Scott, the challenge is that whatever you're going to call that thing, using the term ego, it's almost like it's like a median point that we choose, and we think it can't go beyond. And frankly, when we recognize that there's always more to learn, like most coaches don't have their own coaches, which is a mistake, I believe. I'm grateful I have one at the moment because I was without one for a while, and I'm never getting my life better. Even though I'm doing really good at what I'm doing, I always want to be better at what I'm doing by having somebody guide me who's got more skills than I do. That's the gift of being humble and the gift of learning the lessons. And frankly, most of us could benefit from somebody who's a mentor or a guide, because most of our parents weren't the best opportunities, best guides for ourselves, as you were saying, Scott, with that story. So if we can find someone we can trust who shows us a way through, like you were doing with him, hopefully they can get the lessons and grow. So my wish for everybody is they find someone they can learn from.
Can I add to what you said? Everyone, even our parents, were the best coaches because they showed us how not to be. So
that's what
I will say that. So I'm going to go to Rex real quick.
Well, I've been a big asshole in my life, but I've never wanted to hit anyone with a ball peen hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wish I could say that.
You had a question?
What?
You said you had a question.
No. Before we already addressed it. It. Yeah. It was.
Well, here. So I'll sum it up this way: Frankenstein was not the monster. Frankenstein was the doctor. The monster was Frankenstein's creation, and if the truth be told, both of them were creations of Mary Shelley.
Thank you. I love you, Rex.
I love you, Rex.
I'm speaking metaphor. Or I speak in the linen closet. Who knows?
Friend, good friend. I guess it's my turn.
Good.
Okay, Debbie and I were talking about this on our show last week a bit about mindset and things, and everyone had some really good insights today. But I think it all comes down to this, and I think you guys have heard me say this before. We're here on this planet to experience, to learn, to grow, and to become the very best person that we can be. And what I mean by that is how you experience all of the things that happen to you throughout your life. Everything, the things that we touched upon, the things that you labeled as good or bad, right or wrong, fair or unfair, will determine what you learn. That continued learning leads to your growth. That continued growth paves the way to who and what you become. Our job, our responsibility throughout our entire lives is to become the best person that we can be in any given circumstance. And that's all dependent upon the mindset that we create throughout the day, every day, throughout our entire lives. The 17th century poet Milton said, it's one of the best quotes I ever heard, the mind is its own place. It can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. And what he means when he says this, it's not what happens to us, good, bad, right, wrong, fair, unfair, that determines our quality of life. It's how we identify with what happens. It's how we perceive about what happens is what makes the difference. And what causes some people to fall consistently on a continual basis is that they have that choice. And for every choice you make, there's always a consequence, whether it's made consciously or unconsciously. As a matter of fact, everyone that's listening right now, where you are at this point in your life, whether you like it or not, is based on choices that you made at some point in the past. Yep. Those choices are the key factors that determine the quality of life that you have right now.
Thank you, Steve. I love you.
How do I follow that?
Repeat it.
And it's because of Kellyanne I met Steve. I got to say that.
So I just know that in keeping your self-esteem and your self-importance in check, that's me personally what allows me to not rob myself of any lessons that could be heading my way.
I love it. It's Jonesy, I love you. Last words?
No, just thanks everybody. We're all exactly where we are because it's what we choose to be and where we choose to be. And if we wanted to be somewhere different, then we choose to be somewhere different and we'll be that. But we're all here and I'm grateful that you are. I'm grateful your choices led us to this show. And I'm grateful we get to spend Tuesday nights together. And God willing, we're going to keep this going. So, and thank you to everybody out there who's watching and listening. And please share this with your friends.
And be safe in Florida. Love you guys. God bless. Bye.
Bye, all.
Keeping me safe and sound. And when I